So we're back today with another projector review. BenQ has been busy lately making some impressive sub $800 projectors specifically made for gaming and golf simulators. We want to review and compare two of their entry-level gaming simulator projectors, the TH671ST and the new LW500ST. Each projector has its pros and cons for individual users, and we hope by the end of this video you'll have a better understanding of which projector is right for you and your space. Here's a detailed list of the specs for each projector. The 671ST offers vertical keystone correction, while the 500ST offers vertical and horizontal keystone correction. If you plan on mounting your projector off-center from your impact screen, the LW500ST is going to be the better option for you. As you'll see later in the video, during our testing, both projectors have their strengths and weaknesses for picture quality. The biggest advantage to the TH671ST is that it has a resolution of 1920 by 1080, while the LW500ST only has 1280 by 800. This results in a slightly more pixelated image from the 500ST, but it's not really as noticeable as you might expect. The 671ST is also a bit brighter than the 500ST, but if you have controlled lighting in your room, it really shouldn't be too much of an issue. The LW500ST outperformed the 671ST in color accuracy in our opinion, so you'll have to decide which is more important to you. The TH671ST has a light source life rating of 4,000 hours at full power, doubling to 10,000 hours in eco mode. This may not seem too impressive, but replacement bulbs are considerably inexpensive at a current price of $119. The 500ST has a much improved life of 20,000 hours with up to 30,000 hours in eco mode. If you don't want to worry about replacing your light source, the LW500ST is going to be right for you. Both projectors are within the acceptable input lag parameters for gaming, but the TH671ST does win in this category with half of the lag of the LW500. That being said, we didn't notice any lag differences between the projectors in our tests. The TH671ST has more powerful speakers than the 500ST at 5 watts versus 2, but we would still recommend having an external audio source altogether for great audio quality. So now we're going to show you a real-world setup for these projectors. We've got the TH671ST and the LW500 BenQ projectors. We're just going to go through our setup, show what kind of picture correction we've done to it, and just the various settings on the projectors. So we've placed the projectors here. We've got the TH671ST hanging above. It does have to be centered on the screen. It does not have the ability to be off-center because it doesn't have horizontal keystone correction. For the LW500, we also have it centered, just to kind of give a fair comparison between the two. The LW500, you can place it off-center if you like. It does have the horizontal keystone correction, so if it's off-centered, you can still get that image squared up on the screen, which is really nice for a golf simulator because it gives you more options for your projector placement. Okay, so we are right now looking at the TH671ST. It's running in a 4:3 aspect ratio on our 9x12 DIY enclosure, and this enclosure has the premium impact screen. We're running E6 software off of an iPad. And then as far as the settings, you can see we've just left the brightness, contrast, all that as the default settings. The aspect ratio from the projector, we have it at this native 16:9, but the input from the iPad is giving us the 4:3 ratio. So that's why you see the 16:9 there. And then finally, we changed the vertical keystone on the screen just to try to fill up as much of the screen as possible. So you can make that adjustment from the bottom or from the top. So just looking at some of the different settings, the first thing we'll look at here is your keystone correction, which you'll notice has the ability to do both horizontal and vertical. That's not something you see really very often, if at all, in a projector under $1,000. That's really nice for a golfing setup, especially if you're limited on space, because that just gives you more flexibility for being able to place your projector and get it out of the way, so it helps to limit the chances of you hitting it with a ball or a club. So along with the keystone, it also has corner fit, which just allows you to kind of tweak the image a little more and try to get it to fit the exact size of your screen a little more accurately. So next, we performed a brightness test where we used a light meter to measure the amount of light that hits the screen from each projector. The TH671ST gave us a lux reading of 160 lux at 10 feet from the projector to screen. We did the same test with the 500ST and got a reading of 57 lux, which we really weren't too surprised by because the 500ST has about a third less lumen output than the TH671ST. After testing brightness, we did a color and sharpness comparison. So now we're going to be doing a sharpness and color test. This is a standard test pattern that we've pulled up, and we're going to be using this for both the TH671ST and the LW500ST. So first off, we're going to look at the sharpness on the TH671ST. Overall, it's really good. It looks, across the screen, it looks pretty sharp. You might lose a little bit towards the edges just because of the keystone correction that we had to use to get everything squared up on the screen. You can see on the test patterns here, it looks pretty good up until you start to get into this range. The lines maybe start to get a little more muddled right in there. If you get close to it, you can still see a little bit of definition, but it's, I mean, that's about the line where it starts to lose it a little. Up here, we've got both vertical and horizontal lines. And again, there's fairly good separation between the lines, even in this area right here where it's more of like a crosshatch pattern. You can see some pretty clear definitions between them. So now looking at the dynamic range, first off, we're gonna look around the outside of the circle. The black squares here just kind of represent what a true black should look like, and you can see it's nice dark black color there. And then looking at some of the patterns on the circle itself, looking right here, you can see there's a very clear definition between each area, from this dark gray all the way up to white. The GT1080, when we did this test, down here on the lower end, we were having a really hard time seeing a definition between these two segments here, but it's pretty clear on the TH671ST. So in this line right here, it's just a gradient from a pretty dark gray, almost black, all the way up to white, and you can see it's a pretty smooth transition. There's not much muddling of the different shades that you see there. All right, so now looking at the color on the TH671ST, you can see it's very vibrant on the screen. We're looking at it compared to the display on the iPad where we're getting this image from. The colors are very accurately represented by the projector. Maybe the exception would be on the greens, where it might be a little darker, a little more muted on the screen than we're seeing on the iPad. Looking at this color gradient here, comparing the iPad display to what we're seeing on the screen, there might be a few more lighter blues that you can see in this area on the iPad, but overall, it's very impressive. You can see a very smooth transition between the colors. There's not a lot of loss of color that we're seeing between the projector and our iPad display. So now we're looking at the sharpness test and color comparison for the LW500. Same image that we had up for the first projector. Right off the bat, the LW500, its resolution isn't quite as good. It's 1280 by 800. I mean, you can see just looking at these lines here, there's pretty good distinction again up until this area where it drops off pretty quick. You can see they start to blur together. Up top, you can see a bit of distinction between these lines and maybe a little bit of cross-hatching here, but not quite as clear. Because of the resolution on the LW500, the pixels will be a bit larger, so you just lose some of that fine detail that you get with an HD projector like the TH671ST. So looking at the dynamic range, you can see the blacks around the circle, nice deep dark blacks again. Looking at some of the gradients here inside the circle, you can see pretty similar. You have a pretty clear distinction between all of the boxes here. So looking at the gradient line here, you can see it starts off pretty good, but as you start to get up to these brighter shades, you can see, I think it's a little more washed out up here than it was on the TH671ST, so you don't see as much distinction between those brighter shades. So looking at these smaller circles to the outside of the main circle, just looking at the color comparison here, it looks like the color from the LW500 does much more closely match what we're seeing from the iPad screen. The saturation levels are great. The green is much closer to the actual color than we were seeing before. I think when BenQ was introducing this product, they were really hyping up the colors on it, and I do think that meets the hype. Looking at the color gradient line up here, you can see, again, nice smooth transitions between the different colors. I think on this one, I think there's a little more clarity in the light blues than we were seeing on the TH671ST. And then again, nice smooth transitions back to the dark blues and into the pink. So I think the color on the LW500 is a lot more accurate than we were seeing for the TH671. So I think that's one spot where it does have a bit of a leg up. Next, we ran through a few different courses on E6 software to show what gameplay looks like using each projector. Here we also conducted a test using video to show you the picture performance of each projector for those planning on using their setup to watch videos or movies. Here's an example of how these projectors would look with some ambient light if you don't have a light-controlled space. We're sitting at about 16 or so lux from our ambient brightness hitting the screen. So this is what the screen will look like in a non-light controlled area with each projector. Both the TH671ST and LW500ST are great, affordable projectors for golf simulation. If high resolution and a brighter image are more important to you, the TH671ST is probably going to be the projector for you. If you have a light-controlled space or need to mount your projector off-center or prefer color accuracy to image resolution, the LW500 is probably the better choice. We hope this video helps you with your projector purchase. Let us know if you have any questions or if you'd like to see any other projectors compared in the comments below. If you appreciate content like this, please take the time to like this video because it really helps inform us of what kinds of videos you find helpful and improves our performance in YouTube's algorithms. And as always, please like and subscribe for more content on building your own golf simulator setup.